Chinese metaphor really is waterways, that you think of a stream or a river or a brook. They have all these names that revolve around waterways. So you're basically making sure all the waterways are moving. The worst thing for your health, according to the Chinese medical model, is stagnation or stasis. You don't want ever to have something stuck.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here today with a dear friend of mine, Christine Sotmary, who is also an acupuncturist. So today is going to be all about understanding acupuncture and all those good things. So Christine, tell us, what's your background? I know you have a wild background. Guys, Christine is the kind of person where every time you might be having a conversation with something, Christine says, oh yeah, I wrote a book about that. So Christine, share your story with everybody, and how you got into acupuncture.
Hi, Jen. Basically, I started in college, where that was my first yoga class. And I realized way back when that there was this kind of alternative universe of health and even awareness of that your mind could be aware of more things. And so meditation entered the picture, and slowly but surely, I just learned more and more about this whole world by way of exercise and fitness and Tai Chi, and then that led to massage. I was a massage therapist for a long while, and then that nothing ever felt enough until I got to acupuncture. And then by the time I realized that Chinese medicine was this whole world of healing that I didn't know almost anything about, that as I went deeper and deeper into that, I realized that this really was my calling, and that this was something I had been looking for through all those other modalities. I'm glad I had the experience of those other things, but the acupuncture really has been and still is the most satisfying.
Nice. So here we are, your world is acupuncture. So we want to understand, what systems in the body does acupuncture treat? So when I think about the body, right, you have your bones, your organs, your muscles, your tendons and ligaments. What does acupuncture treat as far as systems in the body?
It treats all of the systems in the body, but it divides them up differently than they do in what I call Western medicine or allopathic medicine.
So how I described it, you divide it differently.
Right. So, for instance, a lung doctor would treat your lungs, and a stomach doctor would treat your stomach. We think of it in terms of different levels that go deeper and deeper into your body. So on both extreme ends, my clients might come in and have a head cold. That would be the most superficial level. Then if it's their lungs or their stomach, that would be the middle level. Then if it's their bones and their brain and their hair and their constitutional energy, which is basically, you probably already know people who get sick all the time, not a great constitution. So people who are just kind of organically healthy all the time have strong constitutions. So that would be the deepest level. So your teeth also. So if people are always going to the dentist, you kind of have this feeling as an acupuncturist that something's going on the deeper level. So you wouldn't treat all those levels at the same time. You really pick a strategy based on mostly what's the most concerning to the person, but it is weighted that you would say, okay, what's the root of that superficial issue that they're having, I may go back in and say, okay, let's start going a little bit deeper with this. So you don't keep getting a cold every year. You don't keep getting bronchitis every year. You don't keep getting stomach aches all the time. You don't get a headache all the time. You can go underneath to some of those deeper levels and say, let's fix some of that stuff. And then some of those more superficial levels will resolve.
Okay, so with acupuncture, I'm sure most of us know, but acupuncture, you put needles, very hairline thin needles in the body. So what's the mechanism by which this works? Do the needles just draw the circulation to a specific area and that's what's healing? Like, what's the mechanism in the body that makes this work?
It's actually quite recent because acupuncture has some very poetic ways of describing how it works. But recently, in terms of Western science, they've found these nodes in the body that actually correspond to the acupuncture points. But a node is a combination, like when you said circulation, that's one of the things that's happening in this very active node. So it would be a combination of circulation, a lot of lymph, which is your kind of your detox system in the body, and then also neurology. So a lot of nerve endings might be in that area. So there's a lot of activity around these nodes, which makes it possible for me to put an acupuncture needle in your leg if I'm treating your headache, because the node is so active in the body that it will carry the messages to other nodes that are up in the head. And so a lot of times people are very confused, like, why am I putting needles in faraway places? I told you it was my knee, but then, you know, in the Chinese metaphor really is waterways, that you think of a stream or a river or a brook. They have all these names that revolve around waterways. So you're basically making sure all the waterways are moving. The worst thing for your health, according to the Chinese medical model, is stagnation or stasis. You don't want ever to have something stuck.
Okay. So in the interest of keeping everything moving and figuring out if something is stuck, what are the ailments or things that I might be experiencing to let me know that acupuncture is the right modality to choose?
So say on the superficial level that we were talking about, you just might be congested. Like you might have a cough, you might be sneezing, you might not, be blowing your nose all day, you might have a headache that's a sinus headache or more like an allergy. So that would be the superficial level. Then the next level would be that now your lungs are congested. So when people get bronchitis, like when people get a cold and then they say it went to my chest, that's an example that it went to the middle level, the next level in. But that could also be your stomach. That could also be that your liver isn't really detoxing. So some of those things, if it revolves around an organ, you would actually feel it in the organ. So you would have stomach aches all the time. You would have reflux if there's inflammation. So you might have to sleep at night propped up on a pillow, so that, or after a big meal, there's a burning, those kinds of things. That would be that middle level that you would want to treat. And then the deepest level would be things like the doctor told me I had osteoporosis, or the dentist said, every time you come in here, you have cavities, or there might be that your hair is falling out. So some of those deeper levels would have symptoms revolving around the systems of the body that are involved in that deeper level.
Okay, so if I know our audience, which I think I do, it's safe to say that most of us are thinking we could use some acupuncture in our life, right? So not everybody is in New York and has access to you. So how does someone determine a good acupuncturist in their town?
There is the fact that most states either license, and they do that through the New York, the state the education system in that state. So like in New York, it's the Board of Ed actually licenses all the professionals, and acupuncture is one of the professions. When they don't have licensing, then they would have a certification process. And so that certification process is a national test, and you would be nationally certified. So what you want to do is you want to find out either from the person, or you can go to an agency. Look online for certified acupuncturist or licensed, state licensed acupuncturist, and they'll pop up. You'll see a list of the people in your state, or put your zip code, and there are organizations that will kind of guide you.
Okay, so how do I find, what am I looking for in someone's background or experience, to determine the right acupuncturist for me?
Basically, it divides into two groups. So you would have people who have been trained in what they call TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. And that's based a little bit more on your symptoms, and you have an issue that you want addressed. So I have back pain, I have knee pain, I get colds every year. That would be TCM. And so all the acupuncturists are trained in that. Then some acupuncturists are additionally trained in what they call classical Chinese medicine. And that's the one where you have these different levels. It's also more appropriate for emotional support, so that you might be helping with depression, anxiety, a grieving process. There's even a point called the broken heart point. So if you've just broken up with someone, you can have your broken heart point fortified.
Noted. I think everybody could use that at some point in life. And if I understand it correctly too, acupuncturists have different specialties as well, right?
Yes. And that would be based on, and that you would have to find out by talking to them. There's no way around it. So in my case, I specialize in immune correction, so that you restore the function of the immune system, so you're not hypervigilant and allergic to everything, or you're getting allergies and asthma, and you're like overly sensitive. Or it can be that your immune system is actually turned around and started attacking yourself, which is an autoimmune disease. And a lot of people have like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and scleroderma and all these autoimmune diseases. So I specialize in correcting the immune system to do what it's supposed to do. And then the second thing I work on is hormones, because I find that hormones really have a very strong effect. With a very small amount of hormone, you can really change someone's blood sugar, and you can change how they digest fat, and you can change how their menstrual cycles go, and you can change just how they're feeling. Sometimes the energy is a lack of the right hormones. So you can bring them up or bring them down, depending on what the person needs.
Just because you said this, and I'm fascinated, and I feel like our listeners have the same questions I do. So when you say you can adjust someone's menstrual cycle, does that mean change when it comes? Does that mean change the intensity? What does that mean?
It means all of the above, depending on the individual person. So like right now, I'm working with someone who has a very short cycle. So she might have her period every 22 days. So as we've been doing the treatments, the time in between cycles is getting longer and longer. It might be something like PMS, where you're not getting cramping. It might be something for menopause about insomnia or having cloudy thinking. So all these things are that the hormones that you have are either not enough, too much, or the cells that they're supposed to be delivered to don't have the ability to receive the hormones. So on all three levels, I would have to address with the person, do a good intake and find out what their symptoms are. You can't treat everybody the same. That's not even in our repertoire. There's no way you can just kind of do a certain protocol that would work for everybody. Wouldn't that be nice? But that's just not the way. That's not how we work.
Okay, so let's say I find somebody, or I find a couple people who have the right specialty for me. How much should this cost? I mean, what's reasonable? I know there's a range in every modality, but how do I know if I'm overpaying?
I would say, again, Dr. Google would probably be able to give you a range in your zip code for what the acupuncturists there are charging, because Sometimes if someone's the only game in town, they might be charging a little bit more. Or if you're someplace like Oregon or New York where acupuncture is really popular, then the prices might be a little lower, or you just have to do your research and call around. I also highly recommend, if you know somebody who's going to an acupuncturist, get a referral, because then they'll be able to tell you. Sometimes you want to pay more because the value is more. So if the person talks about how my acupuncturist spends time with me and I never feel rushed, and they're willing to listen to kind of problem solve with me as to what the underlying conditions are, that should be a higher price. Somebody who's got 4 or 5 rooms going at the same time and they're running between one and the other, and they're just doing more superficial treatments, that's fine too. If that's what you, if your requirements are simple, then you do want to save some money. They call that community acupuncture, by the way, where you have 3 or 4 people being treated at the same time. So that should cost less.
Got it. Okay, good to know. So in your practice, because I'm fascinated, what's the most challenging case you've seen, or is there someone you weren't able to help? And why?
When somebody in their life is not really ready to move on and they're really stuck emotionally, that's hard. That's hard to have the acupuncture have the it might help with the superficial issue, but it would be challenging. So the people that I've had who have not really done a lot of work on themselves, sometimes if they want more than just the superficial level, which is maybe pain or a head cold or something, if they want more than that, it's a little bit harder if they haven't done any emotional work on themselves. So I recommend doing acupuncture together with some kind of therapy or some kind of like a group that you belong to, where you can, or life coaching, where you can talk some of these things out. And then in general, the most difficult cases that I have are the autoimmune cases, because they're multi-layered. Like most people with an autoimmune disease also have maybe symptoms from other autoimmune diseases, or they might have 2, like fibromyalgia and lupus together. They might have sleeping issues, plus they're in pain all day long. So there's so that's the most challenging, but it's also the most rewarding, I have to say.
So when something is more challenging, does that mean it needs more sessions to resolve? It needs longer sessions? From the patient perspective, what could I expect if something is more involved or deeper?
It actually isn't connected, because I've had people who in a very few sessions can have great improvement. And, it's very hard to say whether that's because the person is open and looking and ready. That I don't know exactly why, but there have been people with very complicated cases who have really gotten a very large benefit in a short amount of time. Then there are people who gradually improve over time. So my question to them always is, are you a little bit better than last week? And if they are, we keep going. And I can change the tools that I use, but we keep going. And so as long as they're making small incremental, that would probably be the longest treatment time. And then other people come in just for tune-ups. They come in once every 6 weeks. They've already got a stable level that they're happy with. And then, it might be like a back pain or something that they'll or insomnia or something that they'll just come in.
So what kind of tune-ups? What constitutes a tune-up?
That the person, after they reach the stable level that they're happy with, they would every 6 weeks or so come in. And that might be, oh, my back is starting to get a little tight again, or I noticed a little bit of irritability when I ate like a fatty meal. My stomach was feeling bloated again. So things like that you would get them back to that stable place again.
And I have to think, different from Western medicine insofar as having tests and data, your ability to help someone has to rely very much so on their ability to communicate to you what's going on, right? I mean, if someone's not aware or in tune or in touch, I have to think that makes your job infinitely harder.
It does. And that's why I pretty much, after the first session, I prepare before I even see the person with what questions I would be using. So that would keep the thing going, and to say to them, listen, I'm going to be asking you these questions, so how about you think of the answers before you even get here. So and sometimes I do say, like, try to remember tomorrow how your sleep was, so that they are starting to become aware. And so I've noticed that improves over time, as they get used to monitoring themselves, they get better at it.
That sounds reasonable. And, the more aware we are of what's going on, it makes sense. So I want to ask a few questions sort of away from acupuncture. These are questions we ask everyone we interview. So the first is, what's the best thing you've done for your health this week? And what's the naughtiest thing you've done for your health this week?
The best thing I've done for my health was that I traveled and that I prepared my food before I left and kept it in a little cooler. And so for at least the first 3 days, I was eating great food that I had prepared, but then I ran out of food and I had a cheesecake.
So was that the naughtiest? It sounds delicious.
That's enough. That was the
I love it.
naughtiest.
Everybody's got their thing, the thing we're never going to give up. And if you weren't an acupuncturist, what would you do?
I would be a jazz musician.
Favorite book on any topic except your area of expertise? Fiction counts too.
Outwitted. Okay. There's a book called. Let's just say the author, because Carol Leah Benjamin is a mystery writer, and I actually don't have a favorite book of hers. I love all of them. She's a dog trainer, and that comes into all her mystery novels. And there's always a dog by her side, but she also writes from the West Village, and that's where I had lived. I'm now in the East Village, but I had lived there for a long time, and so I know all the streets, and I know everything she's talking about, so it's really like a fun page-turner kind of read, especially in the summertime now.
If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
I would say Alzheimer's would be great, but really it's cancer, because the age of a lot of the people that are suffering with cancer is so much younger, and it's so much more tragic. And when I hear people say that they lost a relative or a friend, and I can see how they're still grieving, if it was someone in their 20s and 30s and 40s, it's usually cancer. So I would love to be able to cure that.
Add it to the list. All right, if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower, other than curing cancer?
I think I would love to do a Harry Potter and be able to put on an invisibility cloak and listen in on people's conversations without them knowing that I am. Not because of gossip, but I'm just really curious about what people talk about these days.
I agree with you. I'm in on that one. And what's your biggest pet peeve?
Communication. So I enjoy communication when it's going back and forth, and I really don't enjoy feeling like the other person is either looking at their phone, or their eyes are wandering, or they're not really in the room. So that would be, people's ability to focus these days is definitely being compromised. And so,
Oh, yeah. Most of us are doing something else while we listen to this, right? So, we're all guilty of it. All right. And in your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
The genetic composition of our, that would be another tool that we would learn more about our genes and would learn more about the lifestyle that would totally support our genetic makeup. And that, again, it goes back to that treating everyone as an individual. So we're actually pretty much on the cusp now. You can test and you can recommend based on your genes. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and guys, that's actually something you could look forward to. Christine and I will definitely be talking more about all that good stuff, your genes and your lifestyle and nutrition and how all those things come together. So for today, Christine, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We love having you.
It was really fun.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.